Baseball is dead.
Oh, rest in peace.
Oh, Jay, that was a little low on the volume. And if you folks are listening, if your volume's low, well, don't be afraid to raise it just a bit, because we have got a fantastic interview on deck for you. That's right. We have got newly minted Pittsburgh Pirate big ball and slugger Brandon Lowe, two-time All-Star. Brandon Lowe joins the show. We'll get to that a little later. But Jay, we have had
perfect people to interview Lowe, by the way, you and me. Just both sides of the Pirates coin here.
I mean, it doesn't get any better. At one point in time, you and I were joking about how wouldn't it be great if you were the only one left to interview?
Yeah, there was some schedule stuff going on this morning behind the scenes for the folks listening. And, you know, there was a part of me that was like, I kind of hope DB taps out too, because Jared's on some personal time right now, which he obviously earned and deserved. But yeah, it would have been funny for Pirates fans in particular if it was just me interviewing the Pirates guy.
Yeah,
but that's not what it is.
Thank God he didn't have to endure that for a multitude of reasons. But something that we should absolutely highlight and celebrate is something that I talked about happening a while ago throughout the season. If you've been following A's baseball to any sort of extent, you have a pretty good idea of what's been happening in terms of young talent and a young core that has started to form. And I think that has absolutely revealed itself in terms of being a front runner for some of the best young players in baseball. And they have added another one to the long haul. That's right. Tyler Soderstrom, 209's finest. Yep. 209 stand-up Sody, inked up 7 years, 86 mil. That can go to 8 years, all the way up to 131 mil with the option and escalators involved. But the Athletics have done a fantastic job of identifying young talent, getting them to the big leagues. And for Tyler Soderstrom, Jay, something that I brought up when I did a video about him was this is not only deserved, but I think what needs to be respected is the path to this point in time for Sody. Because it's one thing for guys to, you know, have a designated position and work their way through a minor league system in that position, come up to the big leagues and play that position and, you know, break through, if you will. It's a completely different set of circumstances when you have to consider a young player who arrives at the big league level and is then asked almost immediately to start to entertain playing a completely different position. And while you're doing that, you're still trying to get comfortable and figure out who you are as an offensive player, because you're just dealing with, you're dealing with big league shit now on the other side of this batter pitcher interface. So he goes over and plays first base. And as I said, sure, there was some struggles at times, but then he started to turn in highlight reel plays on the defensive side of the baseball, all while maturing offensively. And then you have the rookie of the year in Nick Kurtz show up, and he doesn't even allow a conversation to happen. He will be playing first base because he's able to do what he does, not only defensively, but offensively as well. So where does that leave Tyler Soderstrom? Kind of leaves him kind of looking around. Oh, all right, well, where do I go? What do I do now? And they said, Sody, grab your glove. You're going to left field. And he went out there and was more than serviceable. We've seen the arm play out. We, again, have watched him. I think there have been struggles at times defensively, and I have chalked some of that up to, one, you're completely and totally unfamiliar with the position, but you're also spending half of your season in a ballpark where ball flight and trajectory and your ability to use any sort of backdrop to judge, like, those things are changing almost daily. And so it's not as easy as of a task to tackle as I think some might think it is. Oh, you can just go out and play left field. No big deal. Like, well, no, it is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And you're trying to learn how to read balls coming off the bat of a left-hander, coming off the bat of a right-hander, hard hit. Like, there's so much that factors into it outside of just trying to track baseballs down. But it's also what he brings to the table offensively that has opened the eyes of not only the organization who has known who this player is, but I think the rest of the league as well. Because while going through these defensive adjustments, Jay, this is a dude who has had the responsibility of hitting in the middle of a big league lineup, where at times maybe there wasn't a ton of protection per se. I think we have seen that change and grow because guys that were a part of this group, they've also evolved. They've also gotten better. They've also become threats in their own right. And now you have Tyler Soderstrom, who is going to be here for at least 7 years plus, starting to really turn into what I believe will eventually one day result in a batting champion type of player at the plate. Yeah, I said it. I think this is a guy who I think, and I understand, look, there's some swing and miss.
How many batting champions do you want on that team, buddy?
Well, you know what? There's a few that have the opportunity to do so. And I think that's what gets me so excited is I've watched Sody evolve so quickly because I watched him struggle at the plate with, elevated high velocity fastballs where he was frankly getting doors blown off. And then he said, you know what, man, if I'm going to hang around here, I got to learn how to lay off that pitch and I got to learn how to get to that pitch when it's a strike. And I think he made the necessary adjustments that reflect that. And then the same thing happened with the spin, right? They started back footing him and started just spinning balls that were frankly uncompetitive at times, but that didn't mean that he was going to stop swinging at them. And he had to learn how to start to identify pitches that he was not going to be able to get to or do damage on. And how do you do that? By putting yourself in more advantageous counts and doing a better job of separating balls from strikes. And I think all of those things have played into the quick evolution that I have watched unfold for Sody at the plate. So it's a huge get in terms of having another core member of this team that you can be able to count on and pencil in, at least from a Mark Kotsay perspective, for the next 7+ years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the floor was yours on Soderstrom. I've been looking forward to hearing you talk about it since the transaction happened, and obviously we've had a few days to marinate on it. I think stepping back from Soderstrom specifically, and I'll get to some things that stood out with me from him in a second, but my big picture takeaway is that it just feels like this has all happened so quickly for the A's. And it feels like fucking yesterday that we were talking about how hopeless this situation was. And I'm not trying to make you put you in a weird spot, but like how hopeless this was, like all of the losing, the generationally bad season that they put together. And then it's like you blinked and they're not all the way there yet, but you can really see the picture. And I think obviously you brought him up. None of this really matters if Nick Kurtz isn't Nick Kurtz, right? Like he is the straw that is going to make this whole thing click and work in a way that's meaningful, I think, for the A's, hot, important games, postseason, all that sort of stuff. But the evolution of Soderstrom specifically, and you outlined it, so I'm not going to belabor it, I think is probably the most interesting of the trajectories for maybe all of these players. Maybe Law Dog is a close second or whatever, but I feel like the story for Soderstrom, because you talked about the adjustments and the position change, forget what he did in the box. Like this wasn't a 7th rounder, right? This wasn't some guy who probably went into his professional career thinking, I'm going to be doing, like everybody thinks they're going to do whatever the team wants, but he was a 1st rounder and probably thought he'd be playing the position that he was drafted at. And if he wasn't playing the position that he was drafted at, he'd probably play the 2nd position that he did. And in reality, it was the 3rd position. So I think that certainly speaks to, where his head is at in terms of getting better and achieving at the major league level. And, obviously one of the things that you can point to for a young player, and you talked about pitch recognition and laying off and that sort of stuff, but his improvement against non-fastballs from 23 to 24 to 25 was pretty much as large of a jump as you can possibly make year over year. And that feels like a tent pole for why this is going to be sustainable moving forward. And I guess the final thing I'll say on it is that, you're talking about him as a potential batting champ. Obviously his season last year was outstanding for a player of any age, but what's really kind of cool about this is that, yes, it's a massive contract, but there isn't an expectation that he needs to be the best player on the A's to justify that contract or to make this team work, right? If he's the 3rd best offensive player or the 4th in a given season or the 2nd in a given, like that's all okay. And I just I know we give a lot of time to the A's. I know the people who listen to this podcast, and you specifically, are very keyed in on the young talent that has been coming up and is currently in play here. But this is just, if you would have told me this is what it was in like 23 and 24, I would have been like, that's like the 95th percentile scenario, right? Like this has gone as well as it could for basically every individual player on the team. And then I guess this is my last thing. If you step back and just look at the composite of this team, it's such an interesting collection of players too, because you just get such unique stuff from each guy. Like obviously Kurtz is a potential generational bat. We've talked about many times about his offensive prowess at first base for a player that age is basically unprecedented. Maybe double X is the only other direct comp there. But like Soderstrom and Bangaliers and Rooker and Jacob Wilson and Law Dog they're all unique hitters. They're not all doing things the same way. And then you got a guy like Denzel Clark, who I know you're obsessed with and love dearly, who's bringing like this entirely different profile of production to a team that's largely offensive driven. So I don't know, man. I know you're excited. It's a great time to be emerging as an A's fan, or coming off of the sadness from before, and getting Soderstrom inked long term. I think they're already exceeding my expectations for the level of financial commitment that they would show to the young players, and I hope it continues.
I hope it continues as well. And I'm glad that you touched on the surrounding parts in this lineup, because if you look at how the lineup projects right now, your first four hitters are 30 plus homer capable talent, right?
Yeah.
Like on any given day, it's going to be Langoliers or Kurtz at the top of the lineup. As Mark Kotze has showed, he's unafraid to roll those two boppers out there at the top of the lineup. You've got wherever it's going to be, like whether it's Sody and then Rooker then Sody. I mean, those first four guys are looming power threats. So from a pitching perspective, right out of the gate, from the first inning on, you feel like, well, shit, there's not much room to breathe here through these first 4 or 5 guys. And when you talk about the guys beyond that, having plugged a Jeff McNeil in, this is a guy who's going to put the bat on the ball, right? And he talked about doing as much. Like, hey, I need to put the ball in play. I need to get on base. If I can do that, the guys behind me are going to hopefully do what they're capable of doing. And that's where enter a guy like Jacob Wilson comes into play. Is this guy going to hit 25 homers, 30 homers? Probably not. But this is also a dude who was battling Aaron Judge for the better part of the entire season, really down to the last 2 weeks or so, for the AL batting title. So that's balls in play. That's a guy who has learned how to take big swings in moments where he's got the count in his favor, and he's got guys out on base where he can do damage with them on. And he's also a guy who has shown the like wizard-like ability to drive the ball the other way, to just put the ball in play, find a hole if he's not driving it the other way. So there's a lot to love about what this lineup already possesses. And I get excited about it because, again, I always talk about having watched multiple cores come and go and grow together. This is another example of that. And you mentioned Lawrence Butler. If he continues to make the adjustments that he has to make year in and year out and throughout the season, I mean, there's going to be a battle at third base in-house with guys like Max Muncy, Darrell Hernandez. Like there's going to be a long lineup, I think, at some point in time that people look up and go, damn, okay, I thought these guys had a chance. I did not know that they were like this, though. I didn't know that they had it like that.
And sometimes, like, I know hardcore A's fans have been paying attention to these guys coming up the system for a long time, so I'm not going to insult them by saying that this happened out of nowhere, because it didn't. But it is funny sometimes how certain prospect cores are like the hype train starts at a certain point, and then for other ones, it never really gets going. And I think about the Orioles prospect hype train and where that was and where that's ended up so far. And I think about what the A's have going on and the relative lack of hype that has gone on towards these guys. And I know it's not exactly the same, but like this is as impressive of a young offensive core as has existed in the American League in recent baseball history. I'm not saying it's the best, but it is certainly in the conversation for that type of core. And Obviously, there's a lot of work to do on the pitching side, and the defense, while it got better over the course of last season, obviously still needs work as well. But yeah, I think it's a really, really fun time to be an A's fan. And, candidly, it's very cool for Tyler Soderstrom to have landed a contract of that magnitude, I would think. You got anything more on Soderstrom?
I do not. You mentioned the Orioles and their core. What do you got?
Before we get to that, I just do want to remind the fans that this episode of Baseball is Dead is sponsored by BetterHelp. And in addition to being sponsored by BetterHelp, we're also brought to you by the Underdog Fantasy app. And the Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats, strikeouts, total bases, home runs, and so much more. Make entries of all baseball or mix and match across your other favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog is available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada, which is not a state, of course. They also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. So if you're in Florida listening to this, be sure to check that out. As always, make sure you sign up with the code JARED, that's JARED, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a special pick on Underdog. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code JARED. Orioles.
You lightly touched on the Orioles core.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call Ryan O'Hearn a core member of that team, but Ryan O'Hearn is now a Pittsburgh Pirate. They locked him up to a 2-year deal. We just had Brandon Lowe on, as we'll get to that interview a little later. But Ryan O'Hearn, 2-year, $29 million deal, plugs right into that lineup, and that lineup starts to look a little different than it has in years past. Ryan O'Hearn, a big part of that. I was excited about this get.
I'm sure you were.
Just simply because this wasn't a guy who This wasn't a guy who was just one platoon side heavy in terms of production. Mm-hmm. This was a guy who was getting it done on both sides of that equation, right? Righties, lefties. I mean, for somebody like Ryan O'Hearn to jump into the middle of this lineup now and serve the role that I think he's going to serve, and I think it was Brandon Lowe who talked about it, where, hey, I'm not going to feel all of the pressure. I don't think a guy like O'Hearn or Reynolds is going to feel all of the pressure. I feel like collectively we're going to be able to get the job done. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was the take-home message, was when you start to add these type of bats all together, it's now a little bit of a run that you're going to have to make as an opposing pitching staff to get through this portion of the lineup unscathed. And when you have a guy that can do it against both left-handers and right-handers, that adds just a little more spice to it. So, I mean, 278 against left-handers last year, and I think overall 281, 17 homers. He was a 3-win player. This is a guy who I've had interactions with in the past, and he just wants to, as cliche as it sounds, he just wants to do whatever is necessary to win. And I think putting collective minds like that together in this place right now in Pittsburgh, I think they're headed in the right direction. And I'm not telling you that they're going to be world beaters. I'm not telling you that they're going to be pennant contenders. I know that in-house they probably feel that way, which why would you not feel that way with some of the changes that have happened? But what were your initial thoughts? What was your initial takeaway when you learned about O'Hearn to the Buccos?
So I think top line, he makes them better, right? You can say now, between the transaction of trading for Brandon Lowe and signing Ryan O'Hearn, that they have added 2 of their 3 best hitters, 2 of their 4, their 2 best. It depends on how you look at it, I guess, but they have definitely made their offense better with the addition of these 2 guys. Where, Ryan O'Hearn, I know he was up and down within the course of last season. He was much better with Baltimore than he was with San Diego, but over the course of the last 3 seasons, he's basically been the exact same player. He's been between a 119 and a 125 OPS plus, and cumulatively across that, it's 277, 343, 445, 788, 122 OPS plus. So you kind of know what you're getting at this point. And what you're getting is a guy who's going to make the Pirates lineup, which needed any and all of the help that it could get, better. So I think that's the first thing. But the part of me that, and then I got shit from Pirates fans for going this route. I don't care, but
wow,
it's just hard to be 100% positive about this signing and their offseason when I and we were inundated at the start of the offseason with, this team is really in on Kyle Schwarber. This team is really going to spend the money. And $100 million contracts, yeah, we're doing it. We're going big. And, they were the 4th or 5th best offer for Kyle Schwarber. They have not been seriously engaged on any other marquee free agent. And then to trade for Brandon Lowe and sign Ryan O'Hearn, which I'm pretty sure on this podcast is like exactly what I said I expected them to do back when we were talking about they're going to spend $150 million. It just feels a little disingenuous now to come out and say, oh, the Pirates are really doing things. It's like they signed Ryan O'Hearn for 2 and 24 and traded for Brandon Lowe. Like, that is, in my opinion, and maybe my standards are too high because the Pirates have set the standards too low. That to me is like the bare minimum of what they needed to do this offseason. I am not going to fucking praise the Pirates for spending $24 million to sign Ryan O'Hearn, and I'm not going to praise them for going out and trading for Brandon Lowe, who is a very good player. That to me was the minimum threshold that they needed to meet this offseason to not remain an absolute laughingstock of Major League Baseball. Well, we're talking about taking advantage of Paul Skenes' prime while you have them. And at the end of the day, that taking advantage is going to be trading for Brandon Lowe and signing Ryan O'Hearn. Does that feel like enough for you if we're not going by the standard of a ridiculously pathetic franchise who never does anything at all?
Well, you've created a goalpost that's about like I've got the margin of a toothpick to kick this thing through. So let's start with, is this different behavior for the Pirates than we have seen in the past?
Yes.
Yes, it is different behavior. Is it now leaps and bounds further down the line in terms of being competitive and trying to take advantage of a generational talent and his presence for however long that may be in Paul Skenes? Well, I think it's safe to say it's probably not. But are you allowed to start somewhere?
For sure.
And are you allowed to just get the ball moving in that direction? Because if you have, if you've been burned on some of the big contracts, if you've just felt like, what, I don't want to, we're not somebody who's ever going to make that kind of a commitment to a player. And you're now starting to kind of dip your
take the Schwarber stuff from the beginning of the offseason and put it in the fucking trash. That's what I'm saying. We were led to believe that their behavior was going to be magnitudes different. And in the end, it was degrees different. And that's really all I'm saying. It is that I for a guy who never believed that Schwarber stuff or any of that we're going to spend big at the beginning, it just feels like, I don't know, man. It's like, and I told you, it sounds immature, but it's like, and I told you so. And I just don't think the Pirates should get an enormous amount of credit for doing what I think is the bare minimum.
Put it like this. I don't think that there was ever going to be a real contender with the Phillies when it came to Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, you
just
might
straight
be right.
up. I like because I think you could almost put anybody else who was offering Kyle Schwarber, maybe outside of the Red Sox, depending on how serious they were, that was ever going to contend or pull Schwarber away from what he had felt, what he had created, what he was a part of in Philly. And the idea that they came up short and they want to give it another go. And like this, all signs pointed to Kyle Schwarber never even taking the P off his hat. Like that was he was just going to be a Philly. And for anybody to come to the table and offer him anything, I think you could chalk it up to a valiant effort. And like, what would happen? Like, let's just live in a world very quickly, hypothetically. Kyle Schwarber, like he just knew that he had this super ailing injury and whatever it is. And the Pittsburgh Pirates did end up offering him significantly more money than maybe anybody else was going to offer. And he becomes a Pittsburgh Pirate. Like, does that do anything for you? Because at that point in time, it would just be adding Kyle Schwarber.
Right.
Right.
Which
Who
is
knows
its own
that we
problem.
see.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's its own problem. So I think it would be then easy for people to go, okay, so you spent all this money and you overpaid for Kyle Schwarber. You think that's going to be enough? You think adding Schwarber to the equation is going to be enough? And I think you would understand. No,
For sure.
it's not.
For sure.
So, and I'm not saying that you personally, but I think for people to say, what makes you think they were ever going to be serious contenders to land Kyle Schwarber? And then also be able to say, even if you did land Kyle Schwarber, it wasn't going to mean anything. Like that right there is almost disingenuous for me.
Yep.
And so that's where I say, all right, let's pump the brakes on what you think that Kyle Schwarber was going to mean to this team. And at the same time, I'm not saying give them credit, but had the Pittsburgh Pirates ever, at this point in time, like between us and our existence in this podcast, when's the last time that they were even entertaining writing that kind of a check for somebody?
It's just.
I know what you're saying because I feel
Liriano,
I understand what you're saying, but that's where I say I'm not asking for credit, but I think there just needs to be a simple acknowledgement of, you know what, maybe this is a sign that they're moving forward, that the strategic approach to supplementing this team is changing. However, molasses uphill on a winter day slow that may be, because
and that's the catch-22, and we can move on. But that's the catch-22 of being so far behind the eight ball when you get somebody like Paul Skenes, is that
sure.
And you're right. You're right. There was a pathway where I probably would have criticized them to some extent, regardless. But that all comes back to the fact that you've created a situation where, short of bankrupting yourself, there's almost nothing you can do to properly take advantage in the way that we want of the Paul Skenes era. But you're right. And I said as much as well, but you're right that this unequivocally makes them, the pair of moves makes them a better team than they otherwise were.
It makes them better. And I think it just offers Pirates fans a little glimmer of hope that things could be changing in the future, because you know what you need to happen. And this is what I'll end on. You need these moves to pan out. Because if they do, then what does that do? I think that gives the front office confidence to go out and continue to try to make moves that supplement the team in whatever sort of cost-effective window that they're operating in. Because let's say they're still contenders for an Okamoto who is still out there, an Imai who's still out there. Who knows what those guys end up landing, if they end up landing anywhere. But say they ended up landing one of the two, that may change the conversation even more. But that being said,
you want to go?
Our man JJ Bleday is going to have a new home. He is a Cincinnati Red. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this. I can tell you that JJ obviously experienced some struggles with the Athletics that saw him sent down, saw him designated, and eventually he has been released, found a new home now, and he is a Cincinnati Red. From a Cincinnati Reds perspective, is the needle moving for you, or is this, I think what I think it is, and just probably about trying to create some sort of depth in their outfield group?
Yeah, no, it's not a needle mover for me, but it's also not a complete nothing. Like we're not that far removed from Bleday being, certainly not an emerging star, but a guy who looked like he had a role in an outfield one season ago. I mean, he had a 120 OPS plus with 20 homers and 600 plus plate appearances in 24. And I think, this really is, to your point, as much about the state of the Reds outfield, which is on paper one of the worst outfields in baseball, just to call it what it is, between Friedel and Noelvi Marte, and now Bleday and, Will Benson. They just got Dane Myers as well. So they're really, if you're collecting Dane Myers and JJ Bleday, you need help in the outfield, right? And so that's what it is. And this is, to draw it back to a former teammate of his, what we said about Soderstrom was his advancement, or one of the things was his advancement against non-fastballs. And not only does JJ need to improve against off-speed pitches, but he needs to probably completely retool the way that he approaches them. And I'm not going to say that I have the answer for what that needs to be, but he was easily the worst player in baseball for anyone who saw any real time against off-speed pitches. He hit .061, which is 5 for 82 against off-speed pitches last season. And the next worst batting average was 132. So it's kind of in its own stratosphere. His whiff rate was near 50%. That's also the worst. So you can't survive in Major League Baseball in 25 or 26, I guess, hitting .061 against off-speed pitches or against anything. So if he figures that out, he's probably got a path back. And if there's just a hole in his bat for non-fastballs or off-speed pitches, then this is probably the last time we'll talk about JJ Bleday on the pod. But I think worth the flyer for a team that needs the help.
Yeah. I mean, just to remind folks, this is a dude who hit 43 doubles, a year ago. And if unfortunately you find yourself at the bottom of the pile in terms of how you're approaching off-speed pitches, your success against off-speed pitches, it's one thing to be at the bottom of the pile. It's another thing to be twice as bad as the next closest player to you. And that's where the adjustment needs to be made. That's where the gap needs to be closed.
You see Nightingale's tweet on Eflin?
Yeah. And I
can't let this stuff go. It's not a big move. It's just not.
It's not a big move. It's a move that, I mean, look, they need arms, right? And we understand why
it's harmless.
Eflin's numbers look the way they did because of the injury. So I think when you contextualize all of that, is it a big move? No. Is it probably a necessary move?
Yeah. Sure.
Yes, but big move? I don't know that it's a big move.
It's just so funny that we've reached the point in the offseason where like literally fucking nothing is happening, and we have national reporters going out there and saying that it's a big move. I think, and it wasn't just Nightingale either. Like Heyman, what did Heyman say?
Hey, I'm an idiot.
He said. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But he was like, he also said the same idea where, he said AL East looks loaded after the Orioles add Eflin. It's like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? He was below replacement. And again, we all know why. Yeah, man. I mean, they need, it's sort of like a version of the Reds outfield situation. The Orioles need as many healthy people. Zach Eflin has been effective in the past. He's been effective for them in the past. And there are legitimate reasons to write off what he did last year due to injury, as you said. But, I
think for the Orioles, these are things that had to be done, or something like this is something that had to be done, because you go and lock up a closer. Right? You go and bring Taylor Ward into the equation. You sign the polar bear. You can't stop there if there are still noticeable voids that need filling. And that rotation absolutely needs supplementation. And so I don't know if it's a flyer. It kind of feels like that might be the case, but like you're just hoping for a physical rebound, and you hope that production follows.
Yeah.
And I think that's something.
No, and the dollar cost is low enough that it doesn't matter really if it doesn't work. And that's part of why I think it's so funny, because it's closer to the vet minimum than it is the qualifying offer. So it's just like, I know 10 million seems like a lot of money, but
I'd almost like to see, would you like to see an EMI as opposed to?
Well, that would be a needle mover. This? Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on what he's going to bring, but all of the translation stats and projections suggest that he's kind of a different animal than Zach Eflin, or certainly the upside is higher than Zach Eflin entering his age 32, coming off of, lumbar, whatever. But yeah, necessary. I just thought the contextualizing of the signing was kind of funny. What are your expectations for Pete Fairbanks going from Tampa to Miami?
To get out, to get traded.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think it's interesting that a former Rays executive who now runs the Marlins, he's bringing over a former Rays guy. That's mildly interesting, I think. But
it's I don't want to call it doing him a favor, but it's like, hey man, I know what you're all about. I know what type of dude I'm getting here, and I could bring you in house. I mean, what's the deal? 13 mil? Like that's a nice little chunk. And Pete, I'll be honest with you, if you perform and we do not, I'm probably going to get you out of here. Yeah, I'm probably going to get you to a contender. So here's a nice paycheck. And I mean, because the Rays turned down his option, right?
Correct.
And I think that was for 11 mil.
Yep.
So he gets his $11 million option turned down. He makes $2 more million and heads to South Beach. And like I said, I don't see anything more happening other than he produces, he gets outs, he gets traded.
Yeah, and I won't save the nugs for the end of the pod since it's just me and D, but just a few notes on Fairbanks and why, I think Tampa was probably okay letting him walk. His four-seam effectiveness is in decline. He's gone from a 34% whiff rate and a 139 batting average on the pitch across 22 and 23 to 246 and a 20% whiff rate. He's also lost 1.5 miles of velocity. He allowed 5 homers off his slider in 25. He allowed 5 homers off the slider from 19 to 24 combined. He is throwing the ball. He continues to throw the ball in the zone an enormous percentage of the time. And he upped his changeup usage in a way that he had never done previously in his career. FIP's going the wrong way. ERA is generally going the wrong way. And I think this is probably as much about the Marlins really kind of having to spend some money to avoid probably like their 8th grievance in the last 8 years or something like that. Not that those matter, but I think your read on this is exactly correct. They needed to spend some money. They spent a market rate for a relief pitcher, and that relief pitcher will probably be on a different team come July.
Yeah. I mean, look, I understand that the what they finished last year, the 2 or 3 games under 500.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, whether you consider that a place that might provide optimism, I don't know. I just don't know that, adding a guy like Pete Fairbanks is what gets you over the hump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 games under 500, but also minus 89 run differential. So,
yeah.
Two sides.
He could help shrink that number a little.
we'll get that down to 82, goes. No problem. Let's see what else we got.
Any other? I mean, Cubs, Hunter Harvey.
Yeah,
doing much for you?
Not necessarily a lot for me. But the Cubs have had a lot of success getting the most out of relievers in this current era of Cubs pitching. So I am kind of whenever the Cubs bring in a reliever, my ears perk up just a little bit. But I think the only other thing that was interesting to me is just, I know nobody cared about Andrew Heaney for, the last half decade of his career and in the sense that he wasn't an all-star. He wasn't, putting up big numbers. But whenever a real longtime veteran hangs it up, I do feel like it's appropriate to pay a little tribute. So unless you have anything else, Andrew Heaney.
Let's put some respect on the Heaney dog. Absolutely.
12-year career, decided to hang it up. 4.57 ERA across about 1,100 innings pitched, 208 starts, 22 relief appearances to go with that. Played for 6 different teams: Angels, Rangers, Dodgers, Pirates, Yankees, and Marlins. Finishes with a robust 7.8 career wins above replacement for, according to Baseball Reference. Any Andrew Heaney thoughts?
We talk about the best ability being availability, and at points in times that was the case, and at other points in times you're battling being available. And I think something that folks never really truly understand from an outsider's perspective is how much work goes in to even battling through and trying to be available when you are far less than 100%. And that is something that I know that Andrew Heaney battled throughout a lot of his career. And I think it's a credit to him being able to do what is necessary for his body to function and trying to find that happy medium between what I can provide from a health perspective and how effective I can be with as healthy as I might be at any given point in time during the season. And to be able to carve out 12 years worth of availability to whatever extent it was is impressive to me, especially when you're not somebody who is going to be out there just outstuffing your opponent when you are healthy. Because I think there were point in times where, you know, he had the ability to generate swing and miss. He had the ability to go on good runs in terms of dominant stretches. But for the most part, what you got from Andrew Heaney was a guy who, when healthy, was willing to take the baseball and was somebody who I think could help stabilize rotations at times. And I think what was really cool was to see him, you know, even towards the end, go on runs where it's like, whoa, are we talking about Andrew Heaney in this light right now? Like, is this okay? Okay. So I think it's just a job well done, man, to be able to grind out this kind of a career. And now he gets to go home. He gets to be a dad. He gets to be a husband. He gets to be part of the family that, unfortunately, as ball players and people around the game, that gets backburnered when you're out there just trying to compete.
$55 million in career earnings. Pretty cool for a guy who was never an all-star. And, you know, not really about his career, but I always think it's cool when people are involved in neat trades. And as a reminder, he was basically flipped in consecutive trades in 2014. Went with Kike from the Marlins to the Dodgers in the Heron, D. Strange Gordon, Miguel Rojas deal, and then was flipped to the Angels in a deal for Howie Kendrick. So kind of a cool names blast from the past. He's also, you want to nug on Andrew Heaney?
I would also like to add that Andrew Heaney did win the World Series, Jay. He is a World Series champion.
He is the only pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball to allow at least 199 homers in fewer than 1,200 career innings pitched. So, you know, that's probably why he wanted to hang it up, you know, just to make sure that he would be forever known as that. Before we get to the Brandon Lowe interview, I do want to tell you, since this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, I want to tell you a little bit about BetterHelp, which is obviously serious, particularly at this time of year. The new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burdened you. Therapy can help more easily identify what weighs you down and holds you back by offering an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, motivations, and emotions. I know Jared has talked about his regular trips to therapy and how useful that has been for him. If you haven't heard me talk about it, because I don't typically do the read, I am not in regular therapy, but have used it in the past. And in all seriousness, I cannot recommend it enough. If it's something that if you're going through something where talking it out might help. And I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast know me a certain way, maybe a certain level of condescension, snarkiness, and all of that. I was absolutely one of the people who thought I was too smart to sit down with a therapist, or would just talk circles around that person, and that they would never really understand what I was talking about. And what you find is that just doing the talking and hearing yourself talk, or listening to what they might have to say, but just getting it out, is its own form of therapy and its own really impactful experience. And it might only last 3 or 4 sessions. It could last the rest of your life. But either way, it is highly recommended if that's something that you think would be right for you. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S. BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences, and our 12 plus years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means we typically get it right the first time. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from our tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, having served over 5 million people globally. And it works. with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/baseball. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/baseball. And now, DB, you're the Pirates guy. Why don't you toss it to the interview, pal?
That's it. Here you go. Here is our sit down with new second baseman, Brandon Lowe. All right, we are joined now by two-time All-Star, newly minted bucko, Mr. Loud Noise himself. Brandon, look out in the Allegheny, Lowe, your Pittsburgh Pirate, your new bucko. Brandon, welcome. First things first, man. What's it like getting traded in a fucking duck blind? How'd that go?
I was given a good heads up to it. I knew something was coming. It just kind of felt that way. Honestly, personally, I saw Alonso sign with the Orioles, and I was just like, man, the East is kind of a gauntlet right now. This kind of makes more and more sense, playing GM in my head. And, Eric kind of gave his call and was like, hey, man, some stuff's kind of picking up. It's getting a little bit more serious. Just want to give you a heads up. And, if somebody says that, you kind of understand. You're like, all right, this has got to be really, really close. And so he was great, gave me a little heads up, and then got traded. And then I think the next day, I went out for a duck hunt in Arkansas.
Love that. How was that blowing beaks off? You guys, it looks like you guys had a good haul.
Yeah, that was the most impressive duck hunt I've ever been a part of. On every front of it all, man. The land quality, the people that were out there, it was awesome.
Yeah, it looked like a good time, and I jokingly said that because I could tell that you were obviously in some sort of cabin doing the interviews. I think it's fair that you are ready to turn the page. You've got a new group of teammates. You've got folks that you are going to be getting newly ingrained with. But I do think we gotta kind of pay off where you're coming from. The Trop. This is a ballpark that has many of what I will say quirky characteristics to it. What are you going to miss most, if anything, about the Trop? It was a place that I appreciated playing in. I love to go out and feed the Rays. I always talk about taking the young guys out and feeding the Rays when we would come into town. But somebody who called that place home, this is the only place you've ever known. What are you going to miss about the Trop?
Yeah, it's not surprising hearing a pitcher say that they love the Trop. That's that's about as obvious as they come. Honestly, I'm gonna miss kind of, in a sense, I'm gonna miss the roof a little bit. I think that was like one of my favorite stories to tell people about it. Like, I don't think anybody realized I debuted and left, and the day I showed up, they put a machine out at home plate and they said, "Put your head down. We're gonna fire the ball, and you have to find it in the roof." And I'm telling you, a ball landed probably 3 feet from me, and I had no idea where it was. So watching new teams come in, I loved when teams would call a rookie up and debut against us, because I was like, dude, have fun. This is, you're not going to know where this ball is. And just hearing people talk about, I have no idea how you guys even see the ball on the roof. And I'm like, your 7 years of understanding what I need to look for kind of helps a little bit. So, I think you kind of nailed it with the quirks of the Trop. I'll miss those things because they're little home field advantages mixed in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got 15 different rings in play.
Yeah, I'm not going to hit any doubles off the rings anymore. That'll be upsetting.
That's all right though, because the new ballpark that you got, my friend, and when we talk about some of your numbers, some of your metrics regarding your swing, your ability to put the ball in the air, how fucking hard you're hitting the baseball these days, there's got to be something to that Clemente wall, sort of calling your name, Brandon. It's also a beautiful ballpark. It's a beautiful backdrop, arguably one of the best. So what are you looking forward to in regards to playing in probably one of the most pristine yards that baseball has to offer?
Yeah, you nailed it there too. It's a gorgeous ballpark. The only issue in my whole career, I think I've played one game. I've had one series in Pittsburgh, and I know that Jared Jones broke my foot. So I didn't even get the whole series. No, because then I ended up doing really well because I stopped trying as hard. So It was great. It was like one of those things. It's like, hey man, I'm helping you out by hurting you. But
Sure.
Yeah, it's something about just the history of the ballpark. You know, it's going to be a beautiful backdrop every single time I go out there. Like, it's not going to be, I don't know if you can get tired of going out there and playing with that skyline and bridge in the background. So, I mean, it's going to be something that, you know, I'm going to take in pretty much every single day. And then, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing some guys, you know, do some damage off that wall. I'm honestly really excited to see at this point. I mean, O'Hearn just signed, and then you have O'Neal Cruz that, man, I think then one of them might knock down the wall. They keep hitting the ball the way they do.
Absolute freaks, both of them. Jay, get in here.
Yeah, no, I gotta hop in here because I saw StatCast said that the vast majority of your home runs from last year would have also been home runs at PNC. And my question now is that what's your goal for the number that are going to land in the Allegheny?
Yeah, I just need to. I can't get skunked. That's the only thing. I just got to get one.
Just one splashdown.
Yeah, just give me at least one, and we'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you're going to be wearing a wetsuit while batting early on in the season, because if you're going to go dunk balls out in that river, my friend, it's pretty cold out there. Any sort of weather adjustments you're going to have to make, because, like you said, you've been playing ball in a dome for the entirety of your career, basically. Do you think you're going to have to make any sort of adjustments? You're an outdoors guy, so I didn't think there would be any. But as far as, you know, hitting 95 plus, the things can change a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be certain things that have to get changed. I mean, the mentality of playing in the cold and probably the wet and wind and all that kind of stuff, it'll take a little bit of an adjustment. But, you know, chances are if you think it sucks, so's the guy on the mound. So just focus up and grind and battle, and we'll be all right. I think the biggest thing is getting jammed hurts in the summer, it hurts in a dome, and it hurts in the cold. So it's not going to change that much.
Get the head out.
When you were coming up, did you envision yourself as being the premier power threat on now multiple organizations that you've played for? And did that, obviously that included some physical adjustments. Has that ever included like a mental adjustment for you, given the role that you've played and will now play in Pittsburgh?
To a certain degree. I think if you would have told me that in college, you couldn't have beat that into me with a stick. Like, I'd have told you that you're out of your mind. This is the kind of hitter I am. And I'm actually right outside, you know, our facility right now where I work out, and me and my agent had that talk quite a few times my first year. He said, do it this way. I said, not going to happen. I'm going to do it my way. And I didn't do very well my first year. I thought I was going to have to repeat low A. So I came back tail tucked, and, you know, we developed a swing that I'm kind of doing right now. And, you know, subtle things change over the years, but, you know, I think that was a big thing to it. And the mentality of it is just understanding, you know, what you can do and what there is to the game. I mean, I think every single hitter in the world is a perfectionist. Not a single one wants to get out. Not a pitcher wants to give up a single hit. But the reality of it is, you know, that guy on the mound is probably one of the best pitchers in the world. So he's going to get you out every now and again. It's going to be okay. So trying to deal with that, but still understand that, you know, what the metrics of baseball look like, man. If you hit the ball hard, the chances are you're going to get hit more often. So that was a big change of pace coming from where I was in college. Is I was just going to make contact, and I was going to flick the ball to the shortstop, and, you know, I was going to be cool with my single, and understanding that didn't play anymore, and changing that kind of thing to the new swing, the new load, all that kind of stuff. So it was a bit of a adjustment getting into pro ball, but, you know, we're in a good spot now.
Well, that's kind of something that I wanted to touch on, because, I mean, last year saw you post the second highest max exit velocity of your career, your highest hard hit rate at 47%. I mean, you saw more barrels than Donkey Kong last year. Like, I if you can, pull back the curtain just a bit and talk about maybe some of the adjustments, or at least one of the adjustments that you felt like, this is what now has me like seriously entertaining driving baseballs into bodies of water, like out of the ballpark into the fucking river. Like this is a reality, my friend. This is who you are now. But some of those adjustments that you think have helped in that evolution.
Yeah, I brought this up kind of the other day. I hate that it took me this long to figure it out. And it took 7 years in the big leagues for me to take a step back and realize this. But I mean, controlling my controllables. As a pitcher, you understand that like you hold the keys, man. You're in the driver's seat. The ball didn't get thrown until you want it to be thrown. You decide how quick, where it's going, all that kind of stuff. The only thing that I have control of is what I do myself, my setup, my load, my timing, and the pitch that I swing at. So it was, how do I hyper focus in on those 4 things to make sure that I'm doing the same thing every single time? And what I learned was, man, just take the numbers. And in my cage work and stuff like that, there's a lot of numbers going on, man. It's, where are my hands set up? How far are my feet apart? What's my knee flexion look like? What is all this going on that I can hyper fixate on those numbers in here when it doesn't matter the result? So I don't care if I go out there in the cage work and it looks like crap to some people.
Sure.
Because I understand the process that I'm going through of the muscle memory, trying to make sure that I can do this same thing repeatable every single time. And I know that it's going to translate out there on the field when I stop thinking about it, because I don't need to think about it. And that was like a big thing this past year for me.
I love hearing that, because it's not that you're enamored with, some of the bigger eye-popping numbers that folks, I think, kind of loosely banter about, like, oh, how hard's he hitting it? Exit velocity, right? What's his launch angle? Because people who don't necessarily understand that they're to a finite extent, you can sort of train to evolve those things. But the idea that you are really hammering in on trying to repeat the setup, right? It's tough to get into a certain position and repeat certain movements if you are not in that same position every single time you step in and step out of the box. And it's not just about stepping into the box for the first time. It's from pitch to pitch. You want to be able to make sure that your head is in the same position. You are working to an extent, underneath the baseball. You're seeing as much of the baseball as you can. What led you down that path? And what led you down the path of saying, I can sort of disregard some of these other bigger numbers that I'm pretty confident are going to be there, but I need to focus on these things?
Right. I mean, it's a game of inches. So, I mean, if you're an inch off in your setup, you're going to be 3 inches off on the swing. And all of a sudden, things stockpile and the slump gets bigger and all that kind of stuff. And what led me to it, honestly, I think I saw like a post or a video of Pete Rose talking about hitting. And what he said that really resonated with me was, your swing got you to the big leagues. How come when you're slumping, you try to change your swing? When you're slumping, one of X things is happening. It's either you're getting beat in or beat away, down, up. And he's like, you can change your setup to change up where you are, but don't ever change your swing. And it started to like rattle in my head a little bit late at night. And I was like, why do I? All of a sudden, I'm like, man, I can't hit these pitches. I need to change where my hands are. Or I need to change the way that I'm standing. I'm like, all of a sudden, all this stuff started to not make sense. I'm like, why would I ever change the basis of everything? And then so I started this year, I was like, man, I'm not going to change anything. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to make sure that I do the same thing every single time. And I go out and have a pretty good year.
Yeah, 31 homers, 83 steaks, both career high. I mean, or not career highs for the RBI, but I mean, the productivity as well. The production is there. Jay, what do you got? Jump in.
Well, so Paul Skenes won't be the first electric pitcher that you've ever seen, obviously coming from Tampa, but maybe the most electric, certainly the most famous. And I'm kind of curious now, since you've had very limited exposure to Pittsburgh in general, and he plays in the other league. Like, what are your expectations for just coming into camp and getting to see a talent like Paul Skenes?
I mean, I definitely have never played with the unanimous Cy Young, so there's that. But I'm just more excited to see the way that he goes about his business. Being on the inside, and you understand that stuff just doesn't wake up, stroll into the ballpark and throw 7 shutty. Like, there's a process, there's things that he's doing, there's a mentality, there's pregame work, there's, homework being done on hitters. So I'm just excited to see the intricacies of what makes him so good. Because, there's a lot more that people don't see. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's an absolute freak show. I can tell you, we were in camp last year and had the opportunity just to kind of kind of watch, and I've spent a lot of time with another left-hander that you've seen some of, Tarek Skubal. And the one thing that I take away from both of those dudes is, I mean, if they could race you to the end of brushing their teeth, who did it the cleanest, who did it the quickest, they would be that competitive. They are that competitive. So I think for somebody like you, who I can already tell, you have a cerebral approach. You're a go-getter as well. You like to roll up the sleeves and just kind of get after it too. I think you're very much going to appreciate that, being comfortable in your new clubhouse. Being able to be traded over there with a couple teammates, does that help? Just having some guys that you are familiar with, kind of all landing there together, does that help kind of ease the process a bit?
Personally, when I saw the trade go through, it did ease me a little bit. I'm sitting there going, I don't have to introduce myself to 25 other people and pick and choose who I'm going to talk to every day and do all this kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I think the trade went through, and I texted Mangum and Monty and was just like, hey guys, Pittsburgh, huh? And it's
Here we go.
I gave them a call, just try to check in and see how they were doing and making sure that they were, handling the news all right. But I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, you go somewhere with somebody that especially two guys that you've played the whole season with, so you're comfortable with them. It's going to make that transition a little bit easier.
How about the transition with a new double play partner? Is there a point where you maybe start to look at video just to see how this individual moves? I'm sure you have numbers available to you to tell you what sort of range factors that are going to be a part of your relationship. But how do you go about that process? Because it is essentially, it is like being introduced to a new dance partner, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is reps, man. Getting out there, you can look at stuff on paper all you want, but it doesn't change mentality or anything like that. Like, it could tell him that, well, his first step's not very good, but it doesn't say anything about the next 4. So, I mean, he could have incredible range, but that paper says that he doesn't, and it makes things look a different way. So the biggest thing is getting out there, talking, understanding, where do you want the ball getting thrown? Where do you like to throw the ball? All this other kind of stuff. And, I think that's the great thing about spring training is we'll get out there and we'll have plenty of ground balls with whoever's at shortstop. I'm not exactly sure who it's going to be at this point, but, whoever's over there with me or with my double play partner, we'll figure it out pretty quickly. And that's the great thing about, the guys in the sport is they adapt quick. It's new guys come in and out, and, you gotta get comfortable fast. And, everybody's very adaptable with guys coming in and changing. And, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue.
Yeah, I always refer to position players and pitchers to an extent, but I think position players it's more suited for. I refer to you guys as elite level adjusters, and it's because of what you have to do in conjunction with guys that you're playing with defensively, the kind of arsenals that you're seeing day in and day out at the plate. You are left with no choice but to adjust, and if you haven't figured that out, well, you're going to get left behind very quickly. Speaking of adjusting, there's going to be an entirely new palate, an entirely new flavor of food that you could very well be introduced to. Are you a pierogi dude? I mean, coming from Florida or living in Florida at least half the season, you have an opportunity to dabble in a lot of a lot of very different cuisine, very tasty stuff. Pittsburgh maybe not known so much for its menu.
The food scene.
French fries on everything. That's what it's known for, I think. Yeah, Primanti's.
My son is going to thrive.
I love that. Have you had pierogies? Are you in?
Yeah, me and my wife are actually both Polish, so pierogies. We're pumped about it. We can't wait.
You are dialed in.
He requested the trade to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, right.
I strictly looked at the food and I was like, I need to go here.
Bucko lad, for sure. Do you have a favorite in the pierogi race? Because I'm a huge fan of the hot dog race in Cleveland. Shout out Mustard. But the pierogi race, I think, is quickly becoming one of my second favorites. Do you have a favorite pierogi yet?
I don't know who's in the race. I haven't done honest.
Yeah, just pierogies. I mean, now you're putting me on the spot, yeah, and I can't have that, brother. I don't know, pierogies.
Oh man, whoever's got the most wins, I'll hop on that bandwagon right now.
There you go. There you go. Jay, you got anything else? I want to make sure he's able to get to the grind. I know he's got work to do.
Let's hit him with the hot tub.
All right. We're going to put you in a hot tub high machine, and you get to go back in time any moment in baseball history, and you get to be there to witness it. You're not a part of it. You don't get to play in it. You're just there watching it happen. Which moment are you going to and why?
Yeah, there's probably a couple, but the one that jumps out is Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record. I grew up, I don't know why, I was a huge Hank Aaron fan. So
because he's a baller.
I loved everything about him, and I've watched that highlight more times than I can count. So I think that one would be pretty high up on my list.
Are you running on the field, or are you staying in the stands?
Yeah, personally, I know myself. I'm sitting right there. I'm probably not the guy on the field.
Well, incredible answer, man. Incredible for you to spend some time with us. Like I said, I know you got work to do, so we want to get you out of here. But Brandon Lowe, your newly minted Pittsburgh Pirate. Look out in the Allegheny. There's going to be balls dunking left and right. Bilal, appreciate you, man. I'll say hey at the ballpark. Go get a good workout in. We'll see you later, brother.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Take it easy, man. All right. Thank you to Brandon Lowe for joining us. That was fun. That was fun. I jokingly asked him what was it like getting traded while in a duck blind, and he said, "You know what? We knew it was coming. We had an idea, but you're right. I was in the duck blind the day after, blowing heads off some ducks, and I'm sure he'll have a wonderful feast here very soon. I can't wait to see him feast on baseballs and dump those things into the Allegheny, Jay Hay. That is all we have time for today. As Jay Hay said, not a nug heavy back end here. He dropped some nuglets all throughout the pod. So make sure you rewind and go find those. We will see you later. We out.